Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hope you all enjoyed your meal. We're in the last mile of the race, and sometimes in the last mile of the race, after the meal, it may be a little difficult to muster your bodies through it, but I'm sure you can do that. We're happy to have with us, of course, Mr. Brian Chad Starks, who will be presenting capable, and glad to have Kerry back at the slides, although he didn't call your names or my name for the prizes. But nonetheless, before we get started, we certainly want to encourage all of you all to make sure that you do the evaluation. I would hope that you all already done them for each session. If not, please do them and make sure that you give them to me before you leave. Without further ado, we'll get started with Mr. Starks and forth. Do this thing. Thank you. Now, timekeeper.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Brian Chad Starks, and I'm born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm a proud graduate of Columbia High School. I'm currently a PhD candidate, which will graduate in August with a degree in criminology. My focus is on community courts, law, and policy, based in a structured inequality profession with a ground roots perspective. So at this point, I'm going to introduce my research project of today, which is contextualizing black boys' use of a street identity. Why black boys use street life as a site of resiliency in high school. This afternoon, I would like to talk to you about a research project that in many respects, I think is a tripod study. The Street Life Project, in very real ways, is a theoretical, methodological, as well as qualitative and quantitative empirical exploration of the streets, particularly as understood through the perspective of young black men. It is important to note that it is the position of this study that young black men's standpoint is a particular perspective in the streets. Specifically, this study, which is a participatory action research project, explores how low-income black men engage in street life as a site of resiliency, particularly as a function of their attitudes towards economic and educational opportunities. It is important to note that the experience of opportunity, and in the case of these men, the experience of blocked opportunity, is a particular racialized and gendered experience of opportunity. Put another way, the question for me and for the guys who joined me on this study, who are all black men that are active in the streets, the question for us was, at one point, does one psychology, at what point do black men figure as a result of inadequate opportunity, inadequate chances at life, at what point do these men figure it to be adaptive? Or when does they figure it, for right or for wrong, makes sense for them to hit the streets? It is in that moment that much can be learned from these young men about the dynamics of his lifestyle or the psychology of criminal behavior, particularly through the black male experience. And having a deeper sense of his experience can be very useful to educators, researchers, criminal justice practitioners, and policymakers. What exactly does street life mean? Street life is an ideology centered around economic and personal survival. In addition, street life in this study is defined as an ideology and a set of activities. Ideology has three different dimensions that I'm going to talk about today. First one is passed on. Street life has been passed on from older black men to younger black men and has become a generational institutional structure in low-income communities. Secondly, the more you understand the street code, then the more resilient you are. Thirdly, the ideology is used for personal and economic survival. It's like the third or fourth time I've hinted on economic survival, and I don't want to lose that point throughout this presentation. Street life is also a set of activities, some legal, some illegal. It's a set of activities that include bonding activities. So on one hand, you can find the men engaged in a set of illegal activities, such as selling drugs or fighting. And on the other hand, you can find these same men involved in organizing such community activities as barbecues, block parties, basketball tournaments, or hip-hop concerts. A gentleman by the name of Howard Stevens at the University of Penn writes about a theory called both and. Both and means young black men that are street life oriented can actually believe in God and sell drugs for economic survival. Young black men can actually bear the crucifix around his neck and throw block parties, give away turkeys that we've seen in a number of the mainstream sensationalized movies, but at the same time, hand heroin, crack cocaine, marijuana, Percocets to their loved ones in order to economically survive. The meaning of street life to one of the 4 young black men in this study. Not to get into the data too quickly from the research project, but given that this was a phenomenological-based study, it was very important for us to match our definition of street life to the men involved in the study definition of street life. In this example, you can clearly see, hear, and feel notions of economic and personal survival, as well as notions of resiliency, slicing and cutting through the text. Wabins, 17 years old, 11th grade. Street life to me means like hustling and everything. Like street life to me is like basically growing up in the streets. You feel me? Like they say it takes a whole community to raise a child. It's like having to go through everything. Like having to really struggle to get what you need and to survive. And to feed your kids. Or for the bad shit you've got to do, like selling drugs. Never in my life have I met someone that actually thought selling drugs was good. Can you understand the psychological warfare that these young black men must be facing to make a choice for economic survival, knowing that they're going to damage loved ones, family members, as well as their community? That's what street life is to me, says Wabins. And like you get up, and every time you get up, you might get knocked down. But you've got to keep doing it all over and over again. Be ready to fight. The strong survive. That's what street life is. It ain't all bad. We have cookouts. They, older or more senior, street life oriented black men, again, generational, make cookouts. So I say like all street life ain't bad. Because like some people do try to give back to it. If they know they're going to do wrong, they try to give back to the kids that's growing up at least. Both and. Both and. Resiliency. We're going to talk a little bit about the theory. What exactly is sites of resiliency theory really about? We argue that street life or criminal activities is a site of resiliency. It is a space that the men are coming to for right or for wrong, but mainly as a function of block opportunity to survive, to feel accomplished and satisfied. The site, according to the theory, consists of 2 dimensions. So for an actual site of resiliency or street identity to be real, you have to be at least clear to identify the psychological and physical properties that work to frame a street identity. And as you know, you see the psychological reference the code that I mentioned earlier. The physical space, street corners, my boy's crib, barbershops, basketball courts, physical spaces where bonding occurs amongst and between the men. History of black crime. Why do we think crime just started yesterday with our young black men? Why do we pinpoint them, a 14-year-old with a pair of sagging pants, and act like 1865 never existed? They're victims. They're victims of history. Victims of history. We've been involved in the criminal justice system way before hip-hop music, folks. We've been involved in street life in order to survive for centuries. Some of the education that we fail to give our youth about slavery and our quest for freedom, Harriet Tubman carried a gun. And she did not get arrested for just brandishing a weapon. She committed crimes with this gun. She killed slave masters that interfered in her bigger purpose of getting freedom for those that had been denigrated, captivated, manipulated, and used for economic prosperity for someone else. She even killed slaves for fear of them going to jail and shutting down the Underground Railroad. Street life didn't start with this 14-year-old marijuana smoker that has his pants sagging, folks. It's been in our communities forever. The infamous 1970s analysis of the streets. President Nixon racialized crime in the early 70s. Only 6 years after civil rights. It's pretty deep, right? The opportunity to control and manipulate a certain type of person that was not included in the Constitution, that was afforded freedom, had now all of a sudden become the target of the criminal justice system. They're attributed to the race riots in response to Dr. Martin Luther King's death. Of course we were unhappy. President Kennedy made a number of promises that were not fulfilled. We responded in a way. For that point, they use it as an opportunity to say, these are the bad people. I have a quote that I use whenever I'm in front of my students. Wherever you shine the most light, you're going to find the most dirty. Economic recession. FDR dealt with it in 1929. You can look anywhere in any nation, any country at any time, and when you have poverty, you have recession, Charles Darwin comes to life, survival of the fittest. I'm going to eat. I'm not sure about anyone else in the room. We're responsible people. I'm going to take care of my family, and I'm willing to risk going to the penitentiary to feed them. That's the perspective of these young black men that we're dealing with every day in our classrooms. That's the perspective that I'm dealing with each and every day in the criminal justice system. Economic survival with blocked opportunity. It's almost like oil and water. Car won't run with it. The Middle East oil energy crisis. It's easy to pinpoint things. These 7 items that I have listed here, way before the 70s, even became a part of our communities. Robin Kelly, spokesperson, Invoke. A mythic past in which middle-class values supposedly rule. They point to a quote-unquote golden age of good behavior when the young respected their elders, worked hard, did not live their lives for leisure, took education seriously, and respected their neighbor's property. But this has been the claim of every generation of black intellectuals and self-appointed leaders since the end of Black Reconstruction. I'm born and raised here, and I can't count the number of times that I've heard my senior elders say, I don't know what's wrong with these kids. It wasn't like this when I was coming up. I'm here to tell you, my senior elders, that's incorrect. Street life has always been here just as long as you have structural inequalities in these communities and you don't afford an opportunity for a good education, employment, healthcare. Those are the vital things that are necessary to be put in a position to be successful. Why aren't they in these communities? why they blocked opportunities in lieu of opportunities for us all. I'm asking us, and I'm challenging everyone in the room, including me. We should be very mindful of the words that we deliver to our youth and not forget the history that we've seen this cycle before. Historical framework. Broken down into 4 different periods. Black slavery, of course, and I mentioned Harriet Tubman, street life. The second period, the Reconstruction era. We all know about vagrancy laws, right? Young black man walking on the railroad tracks after the civil rights, after. If he was asked to prove his employment status and didn't have a card on him, he was arrested. He was so-called then sentenced to debtor's prison. There was a certain dollar value placed on his freedom. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound familiar? Well, we don't understand when one was allowed freedom, because when the person was sentenced to $80 in 6 months, when you got to 5 months and 30 days, all of a sudden you had another $50 that you owed. Even when you had good behavior. We've seen this over and over and over, folks. It didn't just start in the 70s. So, the research question that I pose for this study is, how do street life-oriented black boys frame experiences with teachers and other school officials? To what extent do street life-oriented black boys feel prepared to locate economic and educational opportunities as function of these relationships? A little bit about my design. Interviewed 215 folks. I'm pretty sure the educators in the room are familiar with the Opportunity Gap Survey, correct? Interviewed 156 young men that were enrolled in school. There were 3 group interviews, not in school, 4 enrolled in high school, 10 so forth. The data was collected in Paterson, New Jersey, and Harlem, New York. 4 gentlemen were asked to join the PAR team for this study to introduce these men to the research process. Can you imagine taking a street life-oriented man and saying you're going to introduce them to the research process? Do you know the value of that teaching and training? Do you understand what the esteem that it instills in them? This is what I do. I take those knockoffs, those marginalized, those folks that we say should be on the island. I want the knucklehead. I want the worst of the worst. Cream rises to the top. I don't want that easy kid in the back room that got the 3.5. That's no challenge. I want the young man that's struggling. That's what we owe them. We owe them a better understanding of what they're going through in order for us to be able to do our jobs better. That's why we chose this educational path. To introduce the men to the research process, 4 research workshops were conducted and hosted in the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, which is located in Newark, New Jersey. In those workshops, we talked about a number of research terms such as social psychology, quantitative and qualitative research. As Dr. King was often criticized about dumbing down his speeches, and he says, no, my people can learn. Didn't dumb down any terminology for them. It's about how you present information to them. It's my responsibility. If I get your butt in the seat, it's my job to teach you. I can't go by a criteria because we don't all learn the same. Hopefully some of you are going to take something away from here, either through my voice or either through observing or either through writing. We all learn differently. It's very difficult to have a classroom with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different cultures, and be able to teach one way. That's too easy. I know I couldn't get it like that, and I'm a proud product of District 1. In those workshops, we talk about a number of research terms again. We also engage in exercises around theory, teaching them to understand how to critically analyze, how to think independently, how to question for it to be grounded in research. We also talked about methodology and analysis. How did you get to the end of the street? Now, can we analyze your trip to get to the end of the street? Research process. The men were paid a $100 stipend for completing the workshop. I'm talking about low-income, street life-oriented men. Not going to insult them and use their life experiences and not compensate them for every phase of the project. They deserve to get paid. They deserve to get paid for their story. Because me and others, historically, as a PhD, we use their stories to build our careers. It's a CV builder for me. It's a published article. All those things look very good to my dean when they're considering me for tenure. But I'm still leaving them where I found them. I've used them. We owe them more. Okay, again, this study was very interested in notions of opportunity, and in particular, economic and educational opportunity. To get at this question, we organized a multi-method design where we were able to collect 371 surveys, 20 individual interviews, and 2 group interviews. The age range was between 16 and 55. All the data collection was cut by 2 subsamples, because we were very interested in documenting within the black male street experience an intergenerational effect across attitudes towards opportunity. So now we're going to get some of those senior folks that may be blaming the youth. And we're going to compare it to the youth that too are street life oriented. Furthermore, to be a participant in the study, you had to 1, self-identify as street life oriented. 2, self-identify as black or African American. 3, self-identify as male. 4, participate in the last year in street life activities for personal survival, be it interpersonal violence or economic survival, selling narcotics or number running, etc. Some of the local folks call them parlay cards around here in the South. But it's number running on a larger level. So after organizing our research questions and research design, we went into the streets of Harlem, New York, and Patterson, New Jersey to collect the data. We went to where the drugs were sold. We went to the street corner, where the street life is happening each and every day. We hung out in various apartment complexes. It is important to note that we went to the negative, neutral, and positive places in which you can find these street life-oriented men. All participants received $10 for the survey and $20 for the interview. We don't take nobody's story without financially compensating. We're gonna pay anybody that's on my team. As we say, we all gonna eat. So one of the variables that I looked at in talking to street life-oriented men, do you care about your grades? Approximately 76% of these young black men strongly agree with the item, I care a lot about my grades. That's over 3/4, folks. Being smart or intelligent, approximately 85% of black boys in this sample think it is important or very important to be smart or intelligent. Also asked the young men, do you think it's important to go to a good school? Approximately 81% of this sample think it is important or very important to go to a good school. Remember, phenomenological study, we're seeing everything through the lens of the street life-oriented young black men. Now, if you have these conversations on a daily, and I've had these conversations in these environments, oh, they don't care about going to school. Sleeping in class may have a lot to do with the night before you got to school than just being in school. We've got to be willing to step outside of a criteria that's written to try to put everyone to fit in a box. Just to walk to the table and say, Brian, why are you sleeping in class? Just give them a chance. Phenomenological. Give them a chance to see it through their eyes. it's easy for us to slide accountability and subject what we think they should do from our end. That's the easy way. Now I can slide them to the assistant principal's office who deals with detention. Oh, get out of my class. I used to think about that. What am I supposed to do if I kick him out? What should he do? Get a good education. How important is it, young black men? Roughly 87% of the sample thought it was important or very important to get a good education. In the United States, a low-income student has the same chance of a good education as a wealthy student. Approximately 70% of the sample strongly disagree with the item. In the United States, a low-income student has the same chance of a good education as a wealthy student. Sounds pretty intelligent to me, doesn't it? Pretty hard to study when you don't have a desk to put the book on. Pretty hard to study when you don't have a book. It's pretty hard to study for a test if you're hungry. Blocked opportunity. We bring these things in the classroom. Y'all have them home today. What you brought with you today? You brought it with you today as well. You can't subject middle class values to low income street life oriented young black men, folks. Let's go to where they are. All right. What happens with these blocked educational opportunities? That forces us to examine the future economic opportunities. The theory of street life as a site of resiliency allows the men also to use the theory in schools. I won't get into the code scheme for the project now, given our time restraints. Nonetheless, before I close, there's one prominent code that I quickly wanted to discuss. The men talked about a pipeline from the streets in the community that spills over into the school site. And then that school-based street concentration spills back into the community to eventually end up in the criminal justice system. It is important to note that the physical space of the school is oftentimes or concurrently used as a site of resiliency. The men talk about how in this space, this street dynamic can actually operate. Specifically, they talked about how the physical site, from a street perspective, is used for recruitment, protection, various hustles, resistant to what's perceived as authoritative and empathic adult figures, as well as talks about the role the school itself plays in preparing them for a street life orientation. Interestingly enough, many of the men felt as if their school experience were more so preparing them for a street life orientation and or prison, as opposed to college. So let's see what Black Soul has to say about school to prison pipeline. When there's a lack of anything, the streets are going to kick in on you. So the streets will come in. The streets will make it so you can at least get half of that which you need. You understand? Teachers not doing nothing, principals not doing nothing, the educational board not doing anything, and it's happening years after. And you see enough older friends going through the same thing. We're doing the same thing. This generation is. We're seeing our classmates doing the same thing. It's everywhere. So we have to change or we get swallowed. It's not going to work. And they know it's not going to work. They allow fights in school to happen. They allow this type of environment to be grown in the high school. Slim says, they don't want you to know nothing, you know? And so when you get out of school, they're supposed to be preparing you for the next step as a grown man, you know? Where if you get out of school and you ain't got no education, you don't know what to do. You got education, but enough? Not enough to get you a decent job up here somewhere. So you go to the streets and you start selling dope or hitting somebody in the head or robbing. Then in that, you get money coming in. Now you're excited. I can't get this money this easy. Now you forget about the other stuff. You put it on the back burner because it didn't do you any good anyway. The men speak very directly and very plainly about feeling betrayed by the school system. The men feel the institutions collude in the undereducation of the students, and again the men feel is that the school itself plays a role in the students' development of a street life orientation. Specifically, they talk about how there is no active presence by the school to aggressively or meaningfully intervene unless it was a disciplinary kind of way. So in many respects, the absence of some kind of nurturing and quality intervention by the institution is evidence of institutional neglect, which in turn contributes to the development of a street life orientation, as well as speaks to the notion of institutional collusion. Also, it is important to note that the men spoke towards an intergenerational effect with respect to seeing this continued pattern in every class or grade of students that came before them. They didn't just feel it was them. They were able to recognize and make connections from how they were experiencing school to how others like them were experiencing school as well. Sounds like research from street life oriented men to me. Just to hit home a little closer on criminal justice, just wanted to offer some incarceration rates broken down on race and gender. And as we can see, white men, 18 or older, 1 in every 106. All men ages 18 or older, 1 in 54. Hispanic men, ages 18 or older, 1 in 36. Black men, ages 18 or older, 1 in 15. Black men, ages 20 to 34, 1 in 9. Sons, fathers, husbands, nephews, uncles, cousins, 1 in 9. There's 9 of us in here now, fellas, fellowettes. Some of us fit the statistical analysis. This is real. It's happening right outside these doors. Women, white women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 355. Hispanic women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 297. All women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 265. And black women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 100. Fastest growing population in the prison system now, black females. It's amazing what the war on drugs could or would do. Yes, ma'am.
Basically, what I've heard you saying in the last two his slides is that our schools are failing our black men, especially the ones that you've interviewed. My question is, where is the community who sits on the school boards? Where are they inputting what should go on in their communities and what should be getting taught? Is this active or?
Well, just for the purposes of this research project,
Yeah,
it was only dealing with street life oriented men.
Okay.
Yet when you have to kind of minimize, so this is just speaking from the men's perspective. Because there are a number of adversaries that I could have dealt with and interviewed,
Right.
but I really wanted to give the street life men their voice, so someone else could get their perspective, because they're often ignored, and they're not given that chance to be seen on a generalizable and a valid level.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not sitting on any school boards, community active, participating with the schools and that sort of thing. But there are voices in the community to impact what's going on in the schools, what's working and what's not working. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, totally.
So their voice is not being heard even with people who work and sit on school boards.
Outside of the institution.
Outside of, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Okay.
All right. What happens with these blocked educational opportunities? That forces us to examine the future economic opportunities. The theory of street life as a site of resiliency allows the men also to use the theory in schools. I won't get into the code scheme for the project now, given our time restraints. Nonetheless, before I close, there's one prominent code that I quickly wanted to discuss. The men talked about a pipeline from the streets in the community that spills over into the school site. And then that school-based street concentration spills back into the community to eventually end up in the criminal justice system. It is important to note that the physical space of the school is oftentimes or concurrently used as a site of resiliency. The men talk about how in this space, this street dynamic can actually operate. Specifically, they talked about how the physical site, from a street perspective, is used for recruitment, protection, various hustles, resistant to what's perceived as authoritative and empathic adult figures, as well as talks about the role the school itself plays in preparing them for a street life orientation. Interestingly enough, many of the men felt as if their school experience were more so preparing them for a street life orientation and or prison, as opposed to college. So let's see what Black Soul has to say about school to prison pipeline. When there's a lack of anything, the streets are going to kick in on you. So the streets will come in. The streets will make it so you can at least get half of that which you need. You understand? Teachers not doing nothing, principals not doing nothing, the educational board not doing anything, and it's happening years after. And you see enough older friends going through the same thing. We're doing the same thing, this generation is. We're seeing our classmates doing the same thing. It's everywhere. So we have to change or we get swallowed. It's not going to work. And they know it's not going to work. They allow fights in school to happen. They allow this type of environment to be grown in the high school. Slim says, they don't want you to know nothing, you know? And so when you get out of school, they're supposed to be preparing you for the next step as a grown man, you know? Where if you get out of school and you ain't got no education, you don't know what to do. You got education, but enough? Not enough to get you a decent job up here somewhere. So you go to the streets and you start selling dope or hitting somebody in the head or robbing. Then in that, you get money coming in. Now you're excited. I can't get this money this easy. Now you forget about the other stuff. You put it on the back burner because it didn't do you any good anyway. The men speak very directly and very plainly about feeling betrayed by the school system. The men feel the institutions collude in the undereducation of the students, and again the men feel as if the school itself plays a role in the students' development of a street life orientation. Specifically, they talk about how there is no active presence by the school to aggressively or meaningfully intervene unless it was a disciplinary kind of way. So in many respects, the absence of some kind of nurturing and quality intervention by the institution is evidence of institutional neglect, which in turn contributes to the development of a street life orientation, as well as speaks to the notion of institutional collusion. Also, it is important to note that the men spoke towards an intergenerational effect with respect to seeing this continued pattern in every class or grade of students that came before them. They didn't just feel it was them. They were able to recognize and make connections from how they were experiencing school to how others like them were experiencing school as well. Sounds like research from street life oriented men to me. Just to hit home a little closer on criminal justice, just wanted to offer some incarceration rates broken down on race and gender. And as we can see, white men, 18 or older, 1 in every 106. All men aged 18 or older, 1 in 54. Hispanic men aged 18 or older, 1 in 36. Black men, ages 18 or older, 1 in 15. Black men, ages 20 to 34, 1 in 9. Sons, fathers, husbands, nephews, uncles, cousins, 1 in 9. There's 9 of us in here now, fellas, fellowettes. Some of us fit the statistical analysis. This is real. It's happening right outside these doors. Women, white women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 355. Hispanic women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 297. All women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 265. And black women ages 35 to 39, 1 in 100. Fastest growing population in the prison system now, black females. It's amazing what the war on drugs could or would do. Yes, ma'am.
Basically, what I've heard you saying in the last two slides is that our schools are failing our black men, especially the ones that you've interviewed. My question is, where is the community who sits on the school boards? Where are they inputting what should go on in their communities and what should be taught? Is this active or?
Well, just for the purpose of this research project,
Yeah,
it was only dealing with street life oriented men.
Okay.
When you have to kind of minimize, so this is just speaking from the men's perspective. Because there are a number of adversaries that I could have dealt with in interviews, but I really wanted to give the street life men their voice, so someone else could get their perspective, because they're often ignored, and they're not given that chance to be seen on a generalizable and a valid level.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not sitting on any school boards, community active, participating with the schools and that sort of thing. But there are voices in the community to impact what's going on in the schools, what's working and what's not working. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, totally.
So their voice is not being heard even with people who work and sit on school boards.
Outside of the institution.
Outside of, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Okay.
We're going to bring it a little closer to home. Last year I came home to visit for a few days, as I often do. And as I sat at my mother's table to eat my grits and turkey bacon, drink my green tea and my great Welch's juice, I read the newspaper. And this bothered me a whole lot. I have this article in my office at the University of Delaware. Missing black men in South Carolina. The 3 major public institutions, Clemson, University of South Carolina, and the College of Charleston, have less than combined 3% black males enrolled. Less than 3%. But the college age that should be in school represent over 6% of the Department of Corrections in the state of South Carolina. That's why they're not in college. We here. We just learn to become better criminals. We just learn to get a scarlet F on our letters that's going to inhibit us from future opportunities, even when we do pay our debts to society. In closing, what does a phenomenological analysis of street life-oriented black boys really teach us about the interaction between teachers and schools? This analysis teaches us productive, unproductive relationships with teachers, positive, negative attitudes towards education, lack of quality preparation, i.e. employment in college, street life identity as a site of resiliency in schools, a school-to-prison pipeline, school violence, participatory action research as a vital opportunity for street life identified boys. Involvement of the boys, the acronym we use for participatory action research is called PAR. PAR studies would give them a set of educational experiences that would greatly assist in offsetting the generally poor academic and or criminal background many of the boys had. Professional experience that includes formal presentations, and journal publications will help the young men gain favorable attention from colleges, employees, and our society overall. Specifically, PAR research can offer the young men employment, a core set of reading, writing, and analytical skills, as well as a platform to constructively frame the lived experiences of street life-oriented black boys. If we are to transform the negative behavior of street life-oriented black boys in schools into a more positive behavior, it begins with adults believing in the students and treating them with respect. Educators must press themselves to better understand and incorporate the lived experiences of these boys into their pedagogical strategies and approaches. This analysis also forces us to think about several questions. Are teachers really effectively reaching young black boys? So what do we do if we take these young men's voices seriously? What do we do about the disrespect and lack of preparation that the young men talk about? Who do we hold accountable? To what extent will we hold ourselves accountable for colluding in one of the largest and most egregious tragedies of our time? To what extent will we hold ourselves responsible? And I'm talking about me as well, for ultimately failing. At what point will we reach that point? Not until we think in these terms or radically reframe our approach. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to come share my research project with you, but more importantly, take the opportunity to reduce the number of young black men incarcerated in the criminal justice system by having a conversation on the value of education and economic opportunities for street life-oriented boys. Before I close, I want to thank first of all, I want to thank Richmond District 1 for having such a great conference. I want to thank good friend and fraternity brother here, Mr. Kerry Abel, for giving me the opportunity to be invited to come to this. But I want to go a little closer and thank my parents. My parents are in the room. It's the first time they've ever seen their son in this position. My brother is sitting to the left of him. And I want to go to my knuckleheads from Richmond District 1, my homeboys like family that also are graduates of Columbia High School. So at this point, if anyone has some slicing to do, I'm ready to be sliced. Yes, ma'am.
Not to slice at all, but just to reiterate what you said in your slide about the young black male who's in school, and they tell you, in fact, one of my students just told me Wednesday, this picnic, I gotta make this money, I gotta hustle. He's definitely in the street life. They come to school, they can't stay awake because they're up running all night.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm fighting for them just to get a decent breakfast when they come to school. Because a lot of children are not eating because they don't have food at home. And people find that so hard to believe there's no bread at the house.
Exactly.
Anything that you eat. My thing is, I am so tired of what's going on in the school system. I want some definite answers as to what we need to do to better our students' lives. We're not reaching them like we should. We're not doing enough. We can do a great deal, but we're cutting them short also. We're just, you know, I keep saying, I called once to get better food from the district to the school, and the cafeteria workers found out that I made a phone call, and they stopped warming my food in the kitchen.
Oh, wow. They alienated you.
Yes, but I see what's going on, and my boys in my class, we have such a great relationship, so they tell me things that I wouldn't dare tell the administrators. But they share their life with me, their life stories. And I think we just need to do more. Please, if there's some way, some answers that you might have after all your research as to how we can do something to help our boys, let me know, because we're losing them, and I don't like what's happening. Just share, if you can share something
Well-
that you learn in the street, to help the boys. 'Cause I have a boy who brings to school a deck of cards every day. And he said, Miss Pinckney, if you can beat me at 21, I won't gamble in the class. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, am I that good? But really, I said, okay. I said, so, but if you do this, I'm gonna try to get you some help, because you need help, you have a gambling problem. He said, this is how I make my phone. This is how I pay the water bill. You know, so Miss Pinckney played 21. And thank God I won. Because, you know, and at that point I said, okay, if I win, I'm gonna write a guidance referral. You're gonna stop bringing your different cards because you have a gambling problem. But still, on the other hand, this is how this young man is helping his family, the street life.
Yeah,
It's
among
all
others.
they know.
Yeah, among others.
Yes, and he's 15.
Wow.
This is what he's doing every day.
I mentioned a number of huge ideas, which is one of the issues about a situation like this because of the degradation that has occurred for so long. And it's going to take a number of collaborative efforts from community, institutions of education, policymakers, people like myself that are fortunate enough to be able to conduct this type of research and get funds from a place like Community Safe Initiative from President Obama's office. We took this model and we got $200,000 in the city of Wilmington, Delaware, and I recruited and hired 15 young black men and women that were formerly involved in the criminal justice system. We took 2 months, 4-hour trainings, 4 days a week, and we trained them like I have been trained as a PhD. Not dumbing down any lessons. I have a binder this thick of every journal article, of every paper, of every book assignment that they had to do. And we challenged them, but we educated them about themselves historically. We educated them and didn't blame them for the condition that's going now, and it allowed them to say, wow, I ain't as bad as I thought. Somebody else was going through what I was going through. And that in itself built trust and rapport for me as that administrator in the room. Then they opened up their ears. So it was easy to pour into them because I respected their voice. And I keep coming back, valuing their voice. They will allow you in, they feel as though they've been alienated and closed out from anyone in an authoritative position that could help. So at this point now, we had at 100% employment. I hired them on 2 other grants that I'm doing research in the community there. I got one student, because I taught at Benedict College for 4 years before I left there to go get my PhD. He's paying $0. He's 28 years old, formerly involved in the criminal justice system, but my relationships and networks, they gave him a chance. He is now a student at Benedict College. We hired one gentleman, we got one in the University of Delaware now, that was sentenced to 32 years in the federal penitentiary for trafficking crack cocaine. He did 11.5 years. He was one of the products of the crack cocaine reduction on the federal level. He's now in our master's program earning his PhD. People that are in positions with resources, we believed in. And we took his voice, their voices, and we took them to the authoritative figure that says, I'm willing to put my neck on the line because I believe that this young man can compete given the resources. And so far, we're having pretty much success with the 15.
I raised my hand. I did not realize Ms. Pinckney was back there. We work at the same school, and I can echo what she's saying, and I can really relate to it. It's my first year at Olympia. We are at the alternative school. The kids are already coming with baggage, and when they come to us, we're supposed to be the alternative. We need to go back and look at some things. If we're really going to be the alternative, we're going to have to make a better difference.
Yes, sir.
I think you said part of it. I'm Kerry Abel, coordinator of Dropout Prevention and Community Partnerships, and I see a lot of the kids who go out to the street and we try to bring them back. But he made an important statement. you have to give them an opportunity to open up and listen to them. And one of the things you said, you sat down and listened to him. So you're gonna have, as long as you have his ear and he feels that you're comfortable with him and that he trusts you, he'll come back to you, because that's where they're hurting. They're hurting inside because no one talks to them, no one listens to their side of the story, no one understands. And then he mentioned, I didn't realize somebody else was going through the same thing I'm going through. And recently we had a speaker in at the high schools and middle schools, those of you at the high schools, Emmanuel Scott, and his presentation and how some of the kids reacted, because they didn't realize that somebody else in the building or in my class was going through the same thing I'm going through. And once we give them an opportunity to talk and let you know where they're coming from, they're kids, they won't help. They just somebody ask for it, and they're coming to school with a lot of adult baggage. And just like you said, they're coming to school hungry, they're coming to school needing things that we automatically as educators think that should be taken care of when you get off the bus, but it's not. So we have to change how we do things, and just like you said, don't put all of them in one box, because they are coming, and it doesn't matter what race you are, what not, you have to give them the opportunity to get to know you, and you have to understand where they're coming from.
I saw on YouTube, a gentleman went to BYU University, and this is BYU University. And he asked the students that were on campus, when is Black History Month? March, April, I think. Could you name a historical Black prominent figure? Will Smith? Yeah, Will Smith, right? They graduated from someone's school. These are college students preparing to lead us as well as become fathers, mothers. They don't even know when Black History Month is and cannot name an historical Black prominent figure.
And some of them are running for president.
Definitely, definitely. Yes, ma'am.
I see from going to these different workshops, I've noticed that there's a big misunderstanding from our point of view as teachers, as educators. Just because we don't stand in their shoes and know where they're coming from, we assume that these kids are supposed to come to us a certain way, but they don't. This new generation, I've worked with pre-K, the 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and as I've worked with them for almost 11 years, the generation changes every time. And these kids are exposed to, I've heard someone say, these kids are exposed to adult situations that they're not supposed to be exposed to. So when they come to us, we as the educators, our job is to, when they leave our hands, we're supposed to give the second or the next grade a product of something that they can work with. But if we're lacking or slacking on our jobs, we are responsible. Whatever tools that the school allows us to have, we're supposed to use that tool to make the best of it. And to use, and it's not the kid that have to adapt to us. We have to adapt to these children. It's not, the kids don't know how to adapt to us. We are adults. We are the responsible adults. These kids are trusting us and believing in us to help them to go through these things that they don't understand. But when we're slacking, we're failing our children. We're really failing our children.
I just want to say one quick comment. I think this was focused on high school, you looked at the high school population.
Yes, sir.
But I think one of our aspects of the solution to this would be, we need to start, because I work on the elementary level. Early intervention, I think, is key. Is really starting to train the kids. Like when I found out, like I mentor, I've been doing it now about 6 years, 7 years, something like that. And when I found out that they were building jails off of third grade reading statistics or behavior statistics, that was, it was alarming to know that they're looking at like, okay, well, right now.
You got tracks. You got tracks.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you 20 years from now how many going to be incarcerated. This is not by mistake. This is not a mistake. A whole nother lecture will be talking about capitalism what do you need for capitalism and privatized industries and prisons, and in order to have 300 beds in a penitentiary, you got to have 300 bodies to fill it.
And not,
I'm sorry, but I wanted to interject right when I had the moment, but you finish your thought.
and not to
Sorry.
cut you off, it's bad, I just got an article from my boss day before yesterday, where these private prison system companies are going into states who are strapped for money and say, we will take over your prison system and save you $60 million a year if you guarantee that we're gonna be 90% full for 20 years. I have the article in my office. They will take over the prison system in that state, save the state a certain amount of money so they won't have to run it, but they have to guarantee them 90% occupancy for 20 years.
Wow.
Wow, that's terrible.
Finish your thought.
No, I'm good. I'm complete. You know, but I just think, man, that early intervention is key. It's key.
It's a $12 billion industry, folks. The chips that they buy at the vending machines, there's over 122 privatized companies in federal institutions. They are eating very good off our children. They're eating very good off our children. We need to get rid of this school to prison pipeline analogy. We can't participate. We can't hand our young black men over to the Department of Corrections. Do a lot of self-disclosure, didn't do much today, but it was interesting growing up across the street from Willow Lane. Department of Juvenile Justice. And I know she gonna smile when I say it, but that was the threat. That was the threat. My granddaddy used to tell you, boy, I'm gonna take you right over there to Willow Lane. That was years ago. That was years ago. This is real. We owe them more, and we have it to give. And we have it to give. Before I leave, thank you for allowing me to step on you today. But let me compliment you and thank you for the effort that you're doing, because we can't do it without you folks in the room. So I didn't want you to leave here thinking that I'm antagonistic about your positions and what you're doing for the youth. But I am challenging you to do more. I'm asking for much more from each individual Indian, including me. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes, it's you.